There's a building in your town, or one town over, that used to be a motorcycle dealership. Maybe it's a vape shop now. Maybe it's a self-storage place, or one of those churches that moves into a dead retail box. But if you look at the shape of it, the big glass front, where the new models used to sit in a row under the lights, the wide service bay around back, you can still see what it was. You can still see the ghost of the place where a kid walked in on a Saturday, sat on a machine he couldn't afford yet, and decided what he wanted to be. That building is a headstone. And there are thousands of them now, scattered across America, and more every year. The American motorcycle dealership, the local shop, the family business, the place that didn't just sell you a bike, but taught you to ride it, serviced it, and stood around it with you on a weekend morning drinking bad coffee. That institution is dying. Not struggling, not adapting, dying. And the people who killed it aren't the ones you'd guess, and the reasons go a lot deeper than kids these days don't ride. I'm Jimmy. This is the documented story of how the American motorcycle dealer died, who killed it, how it happened, and why it is almost certainly never coming back. To understand the death, you have to understand what we lost. Because there was a time, not that long ago, when the American motorcycle dealership was one of the best businesses in the country to be in. And to see how far we've fallen, you have to go back to the top of the mountain. Picture the American motorcycle dealership at its peak, somewhere in the years around the turn of the millennium. Specifically, picture a Harley-Davidson dealership, because Harley was the engine of the entire American industry, and what was good for Harley was good for everybody who sold motorcycles. It was, in that moment, one of the most absurd success stories in American business. Here was a company that had nearly gone bankrupt, that had been a national punchline in the 1970s, and it had clawed its way back to become a genuine cultural phenomenon. By the mid-2000s, Harley-Davidson was selling somewhere in the neighborhood of 350,000 motorcycles a year. They had a waiting list. Think about that. People were paying over sticker price and waiting months for the privilege of buying a brand new American motorcycle. And the customer who was doing that was a very specific person. He was a man, usually in his 40s or 50s, and crucially, he had money. The industry had a slightly mocking nickname for him, the Rub, the rich urban biker. He was a dentist, a contractor, a middle manager who'd done well. He'd grown up watching Easy Rider, he'd always wanted a Harley, and now the kids were out of the house and the mortgage was under control, and he finally had $25,000 to spend on a dream. And the movies fed it. When Wild Hogs came out and put a bunch of middle-aged suburban guys on Harleys up on the big screen, it wasn't a parody to these buyers, it was a documentary. It was them. For the dealer, this was paradise. Because this customer didn't just buy a motorcycle, he bought the jacket, and the boots, and the chrome, and the second bike, and the trailer to haul it, and he came back every weekend. The dealership wasn't a store. It was a clubhouse. It was a lifestyle brand with a service department attached, and the margins on a man buying his identity, $25,000 at a time, were spectacular. And that is the exact moment the seeds of death were planted. Because if you look closely at that paradise, you can already see the thing that's going to kill it. Look at the customer again. He's a man in his 40s or 50s. He is wonderful. He is loyal. He spends like crazy. And he is not getting any younger. Here is the number that explains this entire story, the single most important statistic in the American motorcycle industry, and almost nobody outside the boardrooms was paying attention to it. The median age of the American motorcycle owner. In 1990, the typical motorcycle owner in this country was in his early 30s, a young man's machine. By the late 2000s, that median age had climbed into the 40s. and it kept climbing into the 50s. Now, an industry where the average customer is getting 1 year older every year is an industry that is not replacing its customers. It is an industry slowly aging toward a cliff. Every year, the core buyer got a little older, a little closer to the day he'd hang it up, and there was no flood of 22-year-olds coming in behind him to take his place. The dealership was making so much money off the boom that nobody wanted to ask the terrifying question, what happens when this guy turns 70? We're about to find out. Because before the demographic time bomb could even finish ticking, something else hit the industry like a wrecking ball. In 2008, the financial system of the United States nearly collapsed. And there is no product on earth more exposed to a financial collapse than a $15,000 to $30,000 recreational toy that nobody actually needs. A motorcycle is the definition of discretionary spending. It is the first thing you stop buying when you're scared about money. And in 2008 and 2009, America was terrified about money. The bottom fell out. Sales didn't dip, they cratered. The big bike market lost something close to half its volume in the span of a couple of years. And here's the cruel part, the part that turned a recession into an extinction event. A lot of those rich urban bikers had bought their dream on credit, often against the value of houses that were now worth less than they owed. When the crash came, the toy was the first thing to go. The market got flooded with low mileage, nearly new used motorcycles being dumped by people who needed the cash, which destroyed the value of used bikes and gave anyone who did still want to ride a reason to never set foot in a new bike showroom. For the dealer, this was the beginning of the end. The waiting lists evaporated. The clubhouse emptied out. And the first wave of dealerships, the weaker ones, the ones who had overexpanded during the boom, the ones carrying too much inventory, started locking their doors for good. The industry told itself it was a temporary thing, a bad recession. It would come back. It never really came back. And this is exactly the kind of moment where knowing the real value of a machine separates the people who get taken from the people who get a deal. Because a market full of dumped, distressed inventory is either a trap or the opportunity of a lifetime, depending entirely on whether you can tell a clean bike from a problem. That's the entire purpose of the 2026 Motorcycle Buyer's Bible. Section 5 has the model-by-model breakdown of what's actually worth buying right now, and Section 7 is the full used bike inspection checklist, the exact tells that separate a machine that was maintained from one that's about to cost you. The used market today is priced lower, in real terms, than it's been in 15 years, which means this is the window. Links in the description. It was $97. Right now it's $9. So the recession ended, the stock market recovered, the economy healed, and the motorcycle industry sat there waiting for its customers to come back and slowly, sickeningly realized they were not coming. Because while everyone was distracted by the crash, the demographic time bomb had kept right on ticking, and now it was going off. This is the part of the story that has no villain you can point at, and that's what makes it the most frightening part. The core American motorcycle customer wasn't just aging, he was aging out. The men who built the boom were now in their 60s and 70s. Their eyesight was going. Their reflexes were slowing. Their wives were asking them gently whether maybe it was time. Their doctors were asking less gently. One by one, the most loyal, highest spending customers any industry ever had were doing the thing all of us eventually do. They were getting too old to ride, and then they were dying. And the kids weren't there to replace them. This is the question everyone in the industry was screaming about. Where is the next generation? And the answers, when you line them up, are brutal. A young person in America today is looking at a motorcycle through a completely different window than their father did. Start with money. The generation that's supposed to be buying entry-level motorcycles is the most financially squeezed in modern memory, student debt, rent, that eats half a paycheck. The sense that the basic milestones of adulthood keep moving further out of reach. A motorcycle is a luxury, and a whole generation feels like it can't afford the necessities. Then there's the simple fact that the motorcycle has competition for a young person's attention that it never had before. In 1975, if you were a young man who wanted freedom, escape, identity, a thing that was yours, the motorcycle was the answer. Today, that same restless energy has 1,000 other outlets, most of them on a screen, all of them cheaper, and none of them capable of killing you on a Tuesday. The motorcycle used to be the only door out of an ordinary life. Now it's one door among many, and it's the most expensive and most dangerous one in the hallway. And underneath all of it is something harder to measure. A motorcycle is hard. You have to learn to ride it. You have to get the license, take the course, accept the risk, do the maintenance, develop the skill. It asks something of you. And it's competing in a culture that has gotten extraordinarily good at delivering the feeling of a thing without the difficulty of the thing. The dealership's whole model depended on a steady supply of young people willing to do something hard to become someone new. That supply ran dry. So now we have an industry whose customers are dying and whose replacements never showed up. And faced with that, the manufacturers made a decision. And this is where we finally get our villain, because this was a choice, and it was the wrong one, and it sealed the dealer's fate. Faced with a shrinking pool of customers, the manufacturers, Harley above all, could have gone one of two ways. They could have fought like hell to make motorcycling cheaper, easier, and more accessible, to drag a new generation in the door with affordable, approachable, exciting entry-level machines. Or they could squeeze more and more money out of the aging, wealthy customers they had left. They chose the money. They chased the margin. Watch what happened to the products, the affordable, accessible, smaller motorcycles, the bikes that for a century had been how a young person got into riding, got deprioritized, neglected, and in many cases killed off. Why sell a kid a cheap, small bike he can barely afford when you can sell his father a $30,000 touring machine with heated seats and a stereo? The industry chased the high end relentlessly, and the average price of a new motorcycle marched upward year after year until a new flagship American touring bike cost as much as a car, as much as two cars, if they were economy cars. And in doing that, they pulled up the ladder behind themselves. They made it so that the only people who could comfortably afford a new motorcycle were exactly the people who were aging out of riding. They optimized perfectly for a customer who was disappearing, and they made themselves completely irrelevant to the customer they needed to attract. You cannot create a 60-year-old loyal rider out of thin air. You create him by selling an 18-year-old his first cheap bike and letting him fall in love over the next 40 years. The industry stopped planting the trees and then acted shocked that there was no shade. You can see the panic in the corporate decisions that followed. The flagship American manufacturer closed a major factory and consolidated production. It retreated from entire countries, pulling back from India, one of the largest motorcycle markets on the face of the earth, essentially conceding that it could not figure out how to sell affordable motorcycles to people who actually wanted them. It poured a fortune into a premium electric motorcycle and spun it off, and the sales numbers came back in the low thousands. A rounding error, proving that a 5-figure electric bike was not the thing that was going to save anybody. Every one of these moves was the move of a company managing a decline, not building a future. And every single one of those decisions landed, eventually, on the dealer, because the dealer is the one standing in the showroom when the bikes are too expensive to move and the customers are too old to come in. And this is the part of the machine that, if you're going to buy at all, you have to understand cold, because the manufacturer's hunger for margin doesn't stop at the sticker price. It's baked into the machine itself, right down to the tires. The tires that come on a new bike from the factory are very often a cheaper fleet compound that wears out far faster than the retail version of the same tire with the same name on the sidewall. A quiet little profit decision that costs you money the moment you ride off the lot. Section 2 of the Buyer's Bible lays the whole thing out, along with exactly what to put on instead. Same link in the description. Was 97. Right now, 9. So now put yourself in the shoes of the actual dealer, the family that owns a local shop, caught in the middle of all of this. Your customers are dying. The new ones aren't coming. The bikes you're being shipped are priced beyond what a normal person can pay. And now, one more force arrives to finish you off. Consolidation. For most of the history of American motorcycling, the dealership was a local, independent business. A family owned it. They knew your name. They knew your bike. The guy in the service department had worked on your machine for 15 years and could diagnose a problem over the phone. That shop was woven into the community. It sponsored the local ride. It knew the local roads. It was a place run by people for the people. That model is being strangled from 2 directions. From one side, big consolidated dealer groups and private equity-backed operations move in, buy up the surviving stores, strip out the local character, and run them as cold, efficient, corporate retail outlets where nobody knows your name, and the goal printed on the office wall is quarterly margin. From the other side, the internet eats the parts and accessories business, the high margin stuff, the chrome and the gear and the bolt-ons that used to keep the lights on between bike sales, because why would you pay the local shop's markup when it's $2 cheaper online and it shows up at your door? So the independent dealer gets it from every angle. Bikes too expensive to sell, customers too old to buy, the side businesses bled out by the web, and a corporate buyer standing at the door offering to take the whole headache off their hands. And the family, exhausted, watching a business that 2 generations built slowly die. They take the offer. Or they just lock the doors. Either way, the local motorcycle shop, the actual heart of the thing, goes dark. And another building in another town becomes a ghost with a service bay. Now I have to be fair here because there was one moment recently when it looked like I'd be wrong about all of this. When it looked like the whole thing might come roaring back. When the pandemic hit and the world locked down, something strange happened. People, stuck at home, terrified of crowds and public transit, desperate for a way to get outside and feel free and feel alive, rediscovered the motorcycle. For a brief, glorious stretch, dealers couldn't keep bikes on the floor. Inventory sold out. Used prices shot up. People who'd never ridden were signing up for safety courses. The whole industry exhaled and said, "See? We were wrong. It's back." The kids want it after all. It was a mirage. It was a sugar high. As the world reopened and the fear faded and the economy tightened and interest rates climbed, the bump evaporated. A lot of those impulse buyers discovered that riding was harder and more dangerous and more of a commitment than a lockdown whim could sustain, and their barely used bikes went right back onto the used market. The brief shortage flipped into a glut of unsold inventory sitting on dealer floors, financed at high interest, not moving. The pandemic didn't reverse the decline, it just interrupted it for a moment and made the return to reality even more painful. So here we are, and this is the part where I have to hold 2 true things in my hands at the same time, because if I only tell you one of them, I'm lying to you. The first true thing is that motorcycling itself is not dead. Let me be completely clear about that. The machines are better than they have ever been. The roads are still there. There are still millions of people who love this, who ride every weekend, who feel the thing our fathers felt, who will ride until the day they physically cannot. The passion is real, and it is not going anywhere. As a thing that human beings do, motorcycling is alive. And the second true thing, the one that lives right alongside it, is that the industry built to sustain motorcycling, the dealer network, the local shop, the new bike showroom, the whole commercial ecosystem that taught people to ride and kept them riding for 100 years, that is collapsing, and it is not coming back in the form we knew it. You can love motorcycles with your whole heart and still watch the institution that delivered them to you die. Both of those are true. The passion outlived the business. The riders are outliving the dealers. And that's the strange, sad shape of it. It's not that America fell out of love with the motorcycle. It's that the people who sold us the dream got so good at selling it to one specific generation that they forgot to sell it to the next one. And then that generation got old, and the bill came due, and there was nobody standing behind them to pay it. So think about that ghost building again, the one in your town. A waiting list, once, to buy a machine over sticker. A man in his 50s finally buying the dream he'd carried since he was a boy. A service bay where they knew your name and your bike. A Saturday morning clubhouse smelling of coffee and chain lube. A crash that took half the market and never gave it back. A median age climbing, 1 year, every year, toward a cliff. A generation that couldn't afford the necessities, let alone the dream. A new touring bike that cost as much as 2 cars. A factory closed, a country abandoned, an electric gamble that sold in the low thousands. A family locking the doors of a shop 2 generations built. And a glass storefront, dark now, where the new models used to sit in a row under the lights. Here's the question I can't get out of my head, and it's bigger than motorcycles. We always assume that if a thing is loved, really genuinely loved, the way people love motorcycles, then the business of that thing is safe. That passion protects it. But that's not true, is it? You can love something completely and still let the thing that sustains it quietly bleed out. Because loving the ride was never the same as keeping the shop open, and nobody noticed the difference until the lights went off. So maybe the real question isn't whether the American motorcycle is dying. It isn't. It'll outlive all of us. The question is, who's going to be left to sell it to the kid who walks in on a Saturday when there's no door left for him to walk through?